The bell above the
How much do
shop
I owe you
door
for this
chimed
beautiful
softly
rose?
as he
Don't
stepped
worry
in,
about it. It's on
the
the house
same way
today.
it did every morning,
Wow,
the
thank you
same
so
quiet
much.
sound that had become a ritual no one else noticed but her. His fingers, rough from years of hard work, held a single red rose wrapped in simple brown paper, as if it were something far more fragile than it looked. There was always something in his eyes, something heavy, something unspoken that lingered longer than the scent of flowers in the room. And on this particular morning, as autumn leaves clung to the windows and the world outside moved on without pause, the florist finally realized that this wasn't just a routine. It was a story waiting to be told. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of love that refuses to fade, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness, because stories like this remind us what truly matters. Every morning at exactly 8:15 he would arrive, not early, not late, always at the same time, as if his life depended on that precise moment. His name was Daniel, a single father who carried the weight of the world in the way he walked, shoulders slightly bent, eyes always searching for something that wasn't there anymore. His clothes were simple, often the same worn jacket, and his hands always carried either a lunchbox or a small backpack that clearly didn't belong to him, but to someone much smaller, someone who was the reason he kept going. Behind the counter, Clara had watched him for months. At first, he was just another customer, quiet, polite, forgettable even. But routines have a way of revealing truths, and his routine was too precise, too consistent to ignore. One red rose every single day, never a bouquet, never anything extravagant, just one. Clara had her own reasons for noticing people. Running a flower shop meant understanding emotions without words. People came in for celebrations, apologies, beginnings, and endings. Flowers spoke for them when they couldn't. But Daniel, he never said anything beyond a simple nod and a soft thank you. And yet, his silence said more than most conversations she'd heard. Outside the shop, life wasn't as gentle as the petals he carried. Daniel worked long hours at a repair garage on the edge of town, a place where oil-stained floors and broken engines defined the rhythm of the day. It wasn't the job he had dreamed of, but dreams had a way of changing when responsibilities grew heavier, especially when you were raising a 6-year-old daughter on your own. Emma was the light in his life, the reason he woke up before dawn, the reason he kept moving even when exhaustion threatened to pull him under. She had her mother's smile, the kind that could soften even the hardest days. But she also had questions Daniel sometimes didn't know how to answer. Questions about why her mother wasn't there to braid her hair or read her bedtime stories. 3 years had passed since the accident, but for Daniel, time hadn't moved forward. It had simply stretched, turning each day into something he endured rather than lived. And yet every morning, before the garage, before the struggles, before the quiet loneliness of his small apartment, he stopped at the flower shop. One rose. Clara noticed the way he held it, not casually, not like someone picking up a last-minute gift. He held it with care, almost reverence, as if that rose meant everything. One rainy morning, when the sky seemed to mirror the heaviness in the air, Daniel walked in later than usual. His jacket was soaked, his hair damp, and there was a visible exhaustion in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Clara watched as he reached for his wallet, his fingers hesitating for a brief second, as if calculating something silently. She had seen that look before, the quiet math of someone trying to make ends meet. That morning, she made a decision. She handed him the rose, but when he offered the money, she shook her head gently. It wasn't charity, not in the way people often gave it. It was something softer, something more human, a gesture that said, "I see you." Daniel hesitated, pride flickering in his expression. But then something in him softened, and for the first time he looked at her not just as a florist, but as someone who had stepped into his silent world. From that day on, things began to shift, not dramatically, not all at once, but in small, meaningful ways. Clara started setting aside the freshest rose for him each morning. Sometimes she would add a small ribbon, other times a simple note tucked discreetly into the wrapping, words of encouragement written in careful handwriting. She never signed them. She didn't need to. Daniel began to linger a little longer, not to talk, but to exist in that space where kindness felt natural and unforced. And slowly the weight he carried didn't feel quite as heavy. But the question still remained, who was the rose for? The answer came on a crisp morning when the air felt different, as if something long held back was finally ready to be released. Daniel walked in, but this time there was something new in his expression. Not just sadness, not just routine. There was a quiet resolve. Clara handed him the rose, and before he could leave, she gently asked the question that had lived in her heart for months. She didn't expect an answer, but Daniel paused, and for the first time, he let someone in. He didn't speak in long explanations or dramatic confessions. His truth came quietly, the way all real pain does. The rose wasn't for someone waiting at home. It wasn't for a lover or a secret admirer. It was for his wife. Every morning after leaving the shop, Daniel walked to a small cemetery just a few blocks away. There, beneath a simple stone marked with her name, he placed the rose. It was the only promise he had managed to keep after losing her, that he would never let a single day pass without reminding her that she was still loved, even in absence, especially in absence. Clara felt the weight of his words settle into the silence between them. Suddenly, everything made sense. The precision, the care, the quiet sadness that followed him like a shadow. But there was more. Daniel explained that his daughter Emma believed her mother could still see the flowers. It was something she had said one night in that innocent way children make sense of loss. And Daniel had held on to that belief, not because he knew it was true, but because it gave Emma comfort. And in giving her comfort, it gave him purpose. From that day on, Clara's role in his story became something deeper. She wasn't just selling flowers anymore. She was part of a promise, part of a love that refused to fade. Seasons changed, as they always do. Autumn gave way to winter, and winter slowly softened into spring. The roses continued, each one a quiet testament to devotion. But the most profound change wasn't in Daniel's routine. It was in his heart. The grief that once consumed him began to transform, not disappear, but evolve into something gentler, something that allowed space for healing. He started smiling more, even if just a little. He began noticing the world again, the way Emma laughed, the way sunlight filtered through the trees, the way kindness could exist in unexpected places. And one morning something extraordinary happened. Daniel walked into the shop with Emma beside him. She held his hand tightly, her small fingers wrapped around his as if anchoring him to something brighter. Clara watched as Daniel guided her to the counter, her eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. That morning, they didn't buy just one rose. They bought two, one for the past and one for the future. Before the story comes to a close, there's something important I want to ask you. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you love or something you've lost, please take a moment to like, comment, and share your thoughts. Your support helps keep stories of kindness alive. And here's a special request. Comment below with a single word, remember, because sometimes remembering is the purest form of love we can offer. As Daniel walked out of the shop that day, something had changed in a way that words could never fully capture. The weight he carried wasn't gone, but it was no longer something he bore alone. It had been shared, understood, and quietly honored. And in the simple act of buying a red rose every morning, he had taught everyone around him a powerful truth, that love doesn't end when someone is gone. It lingers, it grows, and sometimes it blooms in the most unexpected places.